right now, it has just gone midday in the United Kingdom, specifically at Windsor Castle. The President of the United States is going to be meeting the King in the next couple of moments. And let's get into some live coverage of the second state visit of Donald Trump to the United Kingdom. The first, of course, was Buckingham Palace, when Queen Elizabeth was on the throne. The second is now as King Charles is on the throne. Queen Camilla will be part of today's ceremonies, along, of course, with the First Lady, Melania Trump. We will try to bring you as much of this live, and I will also make sure that you're not going to be hearing my voice over all of this for the next 30 minutes. That said, I want to introduce you to a person who will help carry us through, and that is a lady that we met in London a couple of years ago. You have seen her plenty of times with Peter Credlin here on Sky News. It's a wonderful Sarah Hewson, who is a royal editor, a journalist and a broadcaster, and she also joins us now. Sarah, it's being described by officials in the UK, and I quote here, that the scale and spectacle of the military ceremony is unprecedented. There'll be around 120 horses, 1,300 members of the British military. There'll be 160 personnel of the Royal Marines, 1,000 members of the British Army, and there will even be American forces as well, not to mention a rather large gold carriage. We're in for a fun half hour here as the President meets the King, Sarah.
Yes, indeed, Paul. It's great to be with you. And we are about to see one of the biggest spectacles, the largest state visit spectacle in modern history, with the biggest involvement of the military, as you just described, the largest guard of honour that's ever been staged for a state visit. There's going to be a fly past involving UK and US aircraft. They are really rolling out the red carpet and pulling out all of the stops for what is being described as an unprecedented second state visit for President Trump, because, of course, he was here in the UK back in 2019. He visited Buckingham Palace and Queen Elizabeth II. What do you do to top that? Well, you try and make it even more spectacular. The British weather isn't quite playing ball, as you can see from those pictures there, Paul. It's pretty grey and murky in Windsor today, but they are awaiting the arrival of President Trump. He's a little behind schedule. That's not unusual for the president, is it? I think that's just Queen Camilla.
Yes, indeed. She's, of course, been ill the past few days, and then, of course, the King well, yes. Just to explain to everyone what's in the bottom right-hand of the grey pictures, yes, it's a English autumn, of course, but you have the President of the United States coming through on Marine One with security either side. Now, the timings of all of this, as Sarah was mentioning, was that we are already a couple, 3 minutes late from what is supposed to be the arrival. You imagine they'll find a way to make this up. But give us an idea again here as we talk to the pictures, and we'll enjoy some of the music and we'll let lots of this breathe as we go. But again, with the President still relatively high in the air, give us an idea again about some of the music here, because in reading some of the preparation notes that have come from the palace today, of course, the flavour is all to do with the United Kingdom, that wonderful British pomp and circumstance. But there is also some American touches through all of this as well, aren't there?
Yeah, and actually we're going to have a US military band performing on the forecourt of Buckingham Palace at Changing the Guard this week for the very first time ever. There's US touches dotted throughout this, and I mentioned the fly past involving US and UK aircraft as well. Let's think about the state banquet, the absolute climax of today's events. There will certainly be nods to the US there in the menu, which is very, very carefully chosen. The music that is being performed by the military bands, mass bands of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards. They're going to be performing the US and the UK national anthems as the Guard of Honour is inspected. And as I said, the largest Guard of Honour that has ever been staged, with 3 regiments taking part in that. The first welcome for the President and the First Lady as they touch down in the grounds of Windsor Castle will be from the Prince and Princess of Wales. Now, we know that the President is a big fan of the Prince of Wales. He met him in Paris at the reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. It was meant to be a pretty fleeting meeting. It ended up lasting more than 40 minutes. It meant that they were late for the banquet hosted by Emmanuel Macron. And afterwards, President Trump described Prince William as a very good-looking guy. He's a big fan of his, and he'll be playing a key role, as will the Princess of Wales. So they will greet them as soon as they land on the lawn of Windsor Castle, and they will escort them to the formal welcome from the King and Queen. Now, President Trump and the First Lady Melania actually arrived in the UK last night at Stansted Airport. They stayed at Wingfield House, the residence of the US ambassador in central London. That's where they've left from. They're en route in Marine One, and you can see Marine One usually flies in formation, so it's not quite clear which one the president is in for security reasons. And Paul, as you would expect, because of the high stakes of this visit, security is at an all-time high. There is a ring of steel around Windsor, and we talk about rings of steel a lot, don't we? But this is an actual, literal ring of steel fencing around the Windsor estate. And a little bit later on, after the formal welcome, after the Guard of Honour has been inspected, the President, the First Lady, the King, the Queen, the Prince and Princess of Wales will take part in a carriage procession. But they're not going to be on the streets of Windsor as we've seen in the past at these big, big occasions. That's all going to be done within the estate. President Trump is not going to have any contact with members of the public. The closest he'll get is those who are serving him his food at the state banquet later on this evening. They really want this to go smoothly. They know that this is a controversial visit. They know that there are protests planned taking place in central London today, but they really want to make this, the optics around all of this, spectacular and smooth.
Now, of course, again, if you are somebody trying to say, well, that this helicopter doesn't look like Marine One, it's not like what we would normally see in Washington. Of course, the reality is any helicopter that the President of the United States is on is designated Marine One. Any plane that he is on when he is travelling in this capacity is also referred to as Air Force One. However, just before he's about to land here, and again, we'll take some natural sound on this in a moment, but Sarah, if you can give me a brief insight here into the size of this. This now not just being the largest of King Charles's reign in terms of the state visit, but one of the largest that has been held in an incredibly long period of time. Is the decision made by the government or by the palace about the size of what we are about to see?
Well, look, a state visit happens at the behest of the government. So the government would ask the monarch to invite another head of state for a state visit because they want to cement those relations, the UK-US relations. And ultimately, this is all about getting a huge trade deal between the UK and the US signed off. We saw Keir Starmer heading to the White House, brandishing a letter from King Charles, inviting Donald Trump for this second state visit. And then the King will have been very much involved in the planning of all of this and the details, right down to the choice of menu tonight at the state banquet, but also to give the thumbs up that this should be the largest ever. We had the state visit by Emmanuel Macron to Windsor in July of this year, but this one trumps, if you excuse the pun, that state visit. And that's quite deliberate. They're not shying away from that fact. They really, really, really want to impress President Trump, and they want the optics of this to be pretty stunning and spectacular, and to really show how important that transatlantic alliance is. And so we're going to have 120 horses, 1,300 members of the British military involved in the ceremonial welcome. You've got 160 from the Royal Marines, the Royal Navy, 1,000 from the British Army. You've got the joint flypast by the UK and US F-35 aircraft. You have got a huge display of military might here, also to demonstrate the strength of the UK-US defence relationship as well. And all waiting now, somewhat behind schedule, aren't we, Paul? Because we were expecting Marine One to touch down at 11:55 and that welcome to get underway promptly at 12 o'clock. But the President and the First Lady shortly to arrive. The King and Queen Camilla are waiting for them. I've seen some images of them just standing at a window, peering out, waiting. The King doesn't like being kept waiting, but he'll have to honour, a big smile and a very big welcome.
Yes, there's part of me, Sarah, that's thinking, as the kids would say, a bit of a flex, a bit of a move here about whom is the bigger figure. I don't think there's any doubt about that in terms of what... again, part of the little signals here, but I don't think anyone's trying to send a negative signal between the United States and the UK. But yeah, a king is not used to being forced to wait, let alone about 15 minutes worth. But as we're about to see here, that the Prince and Princess of Wales will be welcoming the President and the First Lady when Marine One touches down. Obviously, the first of those helicopters was a security one, and now the, again, more traditional-looking one, carrying the President and the First Lady. Obviously, they don't give anyone the security heads up on that until it is all happening before our very own eyes. They, of course, as I say, will be met by the Prince and Princess, William and Kate, of course. They will then make their way to the King and Queen. They will then make their way for about 10 to maybe 15 minutes through a whole series of processions in and around the castle, and they'll be there in the carriage. So we're only, again, about 60 seconds away here. We'll take some natural atmos in a moment. But again, do we have any information, Sarah, about the history of the carriage, the specificity of some of those things that are going to be used as the conveyance to move both the head of state of the UK and the US through Windsor Castle?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to look absolutely spectacular, and this carriage procession through the grounds of Windsor. It is a real shame looking at these images that it is pretty gloomy today, because you'll remember from things like Harry and Meghan's wedding, when they take part in that carriage procession, it is absolutely stunning. It is pretty impressive for the world to watch these images. So they're just about to touch down at Windsor Castle, and as we said, waiting for them, the military lining party. They will then be inspected by the President and the King. We're going to have that first time that the UK and the US military have flown together in a flypast. But I think we're going to look very carefully at the body language over the next few minutes between the President and the First Lady, the Prince and Princess of Wales, but also with the King and Queen. As he was leaving Washington yesterday, the President talked about Charles and Camilla on first name terms as his friends. He says, we've been friends for a long time. He's a great guy, a very elegant man. He has a huge admiration for all things royal, and that dates back to his late mother and her Scottish heritage. The President, a big admirer of Queen Elizabeth II. We're going to see him and the First Lady later on today, Paul, visiting St George's Chapel in Windsor, a private visit where they will pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II in her burial place, and there'll be a small wreath laid there. But a close relationship and a friendship, as Donald Trump describes it, between him and the King. An unlikely one. They're very different, aren't they, in their opinions on all things from the environment to architecture, but they have struck up a close friendship. They write letters to each other. The King, an ardent letter writer, the President very impressed by his handwriting and those letters. But also the First Lady has become something of a pen pal with the King. And it is that relationship that the British government is so keen to exploit. This is the power of the monarchy, the soft diplomacy. This is really the diplomatic ace card for the British government. And to be able to wine and dine the President and all of the pomp and pageantry today that we have ahead of the politics that comes tomorrow.
Okay, it is now the best part of 19 minutes late in terms of this specific moment, but the plan is that obviously everything rolls out like clockwork regardless of when it starts. The expectation here is that it'll take about 5 minutes from the moment of Marine One touching down now to the official meeting of the King and the President. Again, as Sarah's mentioning, for those just turning on, you're seeing Donald Trump arriving at Windsor Castle ahead of, and what now is the beginning of, the second state visit of his presidency to the United Kingdom, one described by the officials in the United Kingdom as one that is going to be, one of the largest ceremonial visits in living memory. As Sarah's mentioned as well here, 120 horses, 1,300 members of the British military. There are 160 personnel from the Royal Marines. The President will be met by the Prince and Princess of Wales before moving on to meeting the King and Queen. Now, the Queen had actually been ill of recent days, but has obviously sturdied up and made it to the ceremonies which are taking place today. Again, if you have just joined us, the decisions about the size and scope of this is obviously in coordination with the palace, but in many ways is the size of the red carpet is decided by the government. Obviously, Keir Starmer keen to remain in the special relationship which always the United Kingdom has had with the United States, multiple presidents and prime ministers through multiple wars and much peacetime. We know the pressure on this relationship is not just in and around trade, but obviously as well, potentially very significant issues to do with the battles in Ukraine and other issues around the world. As we await to see the President, you'll obviously see his staff leaving from the back of the helicopter, and then the President and the First Lady will be joining us. Of course, the ceremonial guards representing the United States are in position as we speak. And let's just take this live here with no interruptions. The President of the United States and the First Lady about to leave Marine One before they will be met by the Prince and Princess of Wales on their way to meeting the King and Queen of the United Kingdom and its realms, including, of course, Australia. As you can see, the Prince and Princess are approaching as we speak, and the moment is upon us now as President Trump is leaving the helicopter. Here's the sound. You'll hear nothing more than the engines, but not a moment for my voice. Enjoy. All right, Sarah, no doubt it'll be in the next few minutes that we'll get the details of the fashion update, but beautiful presentation from a future king, a current president, and their respective and very significant partners. What an important moment this is as a president standing next to the future monarch before he meets the current. Everyone looking their very best.
Absolutely, and really significant that we see the Prince and Princess of Wales there to greet Marine One, to greet the President and the First Lady, and to walk them across the East Lawn of Windsor Castle, where they will then receive their formal ceremonial welcome from the King and Queen Camilla, stepping forward there to shake hands with the President, Camilla standing just a step behind him, and now her turn as the King moves on to welcome the First Lady. So we are going to have a royal salute fired by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery from within the Home Park at Windsor, and simultaneously at the Tower of London by the Honourable Artillery Company. They've walked over to Victoria House. This is on the Windsor estate, and this is where the ceremonial welcome takes place. That is the King's private secretary there, Clive Alderton, who is greeting the President now. And this is very much the moment where they want to show the warmth of that reception for the President. It had been thought, Paul, that the King was rather less keen than the government on this state visit taking place right now, that he would have preferred it to be a little later into President Trump's term. But Keir Starmer very, very keen to have this visit taking place early on and to cement that trade deal, which is so valuable and vital to Britain. The timing of this has been pretty awkward for Britain, given the sacking last week of Britain's man in Washington, Peter Mandelson, over the Jeffrey Epstein files and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And in fact, last night we had pictures of Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump beamed onto Windsor Castle. They're desperate to avoid any embarrassing moments. They want this all to be about the schmoozing, the VVIP treatment for the President and the First Lady, and their very sizable entourage.
Yeah, it is amazing to watch, again, this amateur body language that we're all going to read into things. I think we would all agree that everyone, the President, the King and the future King's partners are all very significant figures in their own right. But interesting to see the leaders speaking amongst each other, the warmth and the introduction that is taking place. Again, this royal carriage, is this, if you don't mind me asking, Sarah, again, because we're going to lean a lot on your expertise here, this is obviously the same carriage that was used in things like the coronation, or is it a special occasion? Yeah. Obviously, this is a pretty amazing stagecoach. Yeah.
Yeah, the state carriages, and then these are kept in the Royal Mews just behind Buckingham Palace in London. And there has been huge amount of preparation to get the carriages ready. You'll see that line of carriages for this procession, to have the horses ready. This is something much like the state opening of Parliament, Trooping the Colour, for example, big state occasions that they rehearse for meticulously to ensure that everything goes smoothly on the day. And choices can be made about whether or not they take an open-top landau or a covered carriage. And this, of course, a covered carriage, given that the weather is so gloomy today for this. So we can see just the King in that carriage now from the angle that we're looking at. And I think what is key about this is a procession, so that it gives us all the optics to be seen around the world. It shows that strength of the relationship. It shows the red carpet being rolled out for the president. But it's not a public carriage procession as we would normally expect to see, either through the streets of central London or through the streets of Windsor. And that is because they are so concerned about the security and the level of protest that might take place.
Now, again, your expertise, absolutely phenomenal in this moment. We've got lots of information about what happens in the next 10 minutes or so as they make their way around the grounds. They'll go through, of course, the George VI gate. That'll be in a couple of moments, maybe even George IV. Well done, Paul. But what I also want people to do is to be able to hear a lot of the natural music. We know that part of these occasions is the firing of guns, the sounds of bands and the rest there. But of course, as the Royal Ensign is flying over, we'll just take some natural atmos for a couple of moments here as the President sits next to the King. What an incredible view. One that Donald Trump, of course, would be dreaming of having as part of returning to the presidency less than a year ago. Again, you can still hear helicopters in the background, but yeah, I can hear a bit of guards, and according to the rundown, as the First Lady is currently in the carriages again, her own carriage there with the Queen. We'll leave you with some of the natural sound coming to us live right now from Windsor Castle. President of the United States, hearing the national anthem of his country as God Save the King now plays, as the President and King arrive at Windsor Castle. Paul Murray live here on Sky News as we see the Prince and Princess of Wales among that procession of carriages. Sarah, talk us through what we are seeing at the moment as we're passing, of course, members of the Royal Navy and, of course, the arrival from where the helicopters are to where they will be inspecting the guards just a couple of moments away from here.
Yeah, we've seen that carriage procession set off through the walled garden and heading to the George IV gate, Paul. We've got the King and the President of the United States leading in the Irish state coach. You can see it there with that very ornate gold roof, often would have been used for monarchs for the state opening of Parliament. It dates back to 1853, where it was exhibited at the Great Industrial Exhibition in Dublin. It's had significant modifications over the years. Behind that, the Scottish state coach is carrying the Queen and the First Lady. And then we have the semi-state landau with the Prince of Wales, the Princess of Wales, and the Ambassador of the United States of America, Warren Stevens, and his wife, Mrs. Stevens. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is following on in another Ascot landau behind, and so on and so forth. So a really spectacular procession. You have 80 soldiers forming the Sovereign's Guard, escorting this carriage through Windsor to arrive at Windsor Castle itself from the walled garden where they had that first greeting and where we saw Marine One touch down. And when they arrive at the castle, outside the castle itself, there will be a guard of honour with the state colours of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards, and the massed military bands as well there to greet them. The first time that 3 state colours will be exhibited together, the first time that 3 regiments will take part in this Guard of Honour, upping the scale. Everything about today's state visit is bigger and better than before. And we know that that will appeal to President Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. As a couple of people have been saying in the UK media that I was monitoring before this program, of course, let's be honest, this is a man who, the President, enjoys all of the finery, much more gold in the Oval Office than would otherwise be there, certainly the way that he's appointed Mar-a-Lago. But to be in these stagecoaches, to be seeing these grounds, and of course the history connected with all of it, it's something that Donald Trump as a person has openly talked about, that he likes this sort of imagery because, of course, it is a representative of the strength of the countries of which he is visiting. We saw when he was going through many Middle Eastern countries, their version of these processions, but there is obviously something unique about the way that it is done here, for how long it has been done, how precise it is all done, and the many layers of what is about to be seen. Now, as Sarah was mentioning before, due to the obvious security here, there's not going to be any exposure of the President and the King to the public. What has previously been little moments where you might see, 200, 300, 500 metres of public exposure outside. That's not going to be the case at all here. Instead, once they're inside the quadrangle, and again, the situation is running somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes late, and given the nature of horseback, etc., there won't be anything being cut for this for time, so for obvious reasons, we will see it all play out before our very eyes. The musicality, the military of it all, and again, the precision and layers of things will leave quite an impression on a president who, remember, of course, back at the White House, has made some, what he considers to be, I don't disagree, but he would consider to be some physical changes to a building that hasn't had many physical changes to it in a long time. He's adding, of course, quite an ornate ballroom, the flags either side. He would be very aware that as America turns into its 250th anniversary next year, that it'll be his opportunity to have many people joining him in the country, presumably people like the King and Queen of the United Kingdom and its realms, that while this is well and truly an improvement on the streets of Washington, that this is the type of red carpet that you want to roll out when you are, again, showing the pomp, the strength and the circumstance as the First Lady is in conversation with Queen Camilla. Now, a little here, Sarah, too, about where Queen Camilla has been for the past couple of days. I know that obviously she might have been trying to recuperate in order to have the strength here. What did we know about her illnesses of the past couple of days?
Yeah, yesterday was a significant day for the royal family because it was the funeral of the Duchess of Kent, the wife of the Duke of Kent, Queen Elizabeth II's first cousin, and her funeral took place at Westminster Cathedral yesterday. The King was there along with the Prince and Princess of Wales and other members of the royal family, but Queen Camilla had to pull out of that because of what was described by Buckingham Palace as an acute sinus infection. I think what yesterday was about, much as she would have wanted to be there to pay her respects and say goodbye to the Duchess of Kent, was about preserving herself for today, because there is a big day of engagements both today and also tomorrow for Queen Camilla, because she will have joint engagements with the First Lady, Melania Trump, tomorrow. And so yesterday's decision, regretful as it was all about making sure that she could be there in full for today. And it has been confirmed by Buckingham Palace that she'll be playing a full part in all of the proceedings of the state visit over the next 48 hours. And what we're really seeing, as you were describing there, Paul, is about demonstrating to President Trump how important he is to the United Kingdom. This is all about status. And what greater status symbol can you have than the largest display of ceremonial military might that has ever been done in recent British history? It looks spectacular, doesn't it, as they make their way up towards Windsor Castle. And this is something that President Trump will dine out on. He's actually been to Windsor Castle before. He visited in 2018, an informal visit, tea with Queen Elizabeth II. That preceded his first state visit, which was in 2019. That was at Buckingham Palace. But Buckingham Palace undergoing significant renovations at the moment, and so all state visits for the foreseeable future have been moved to Windsor Castle. And President Trump has said he's delighted about that, and it is going to look pretty splendid indeed when they sit in St George's Hall later on tonight at a 50-metre table surrounded by portraits of members of the royal family and suits of armour there. Above them, a vaulted ceiling, all the priceless porcelain, the cut crystal, the menu that's been very carefully chosen, and speeches from both the King and the President at that.
Now, as we enter the quadrangle of Windsor Castle and the British Army Guard of Honour is about to be inspected, Sarah, again, we're going to hear some beautiful music. Before we hear it, just give us an idea about who is going to be part of this massed band.
Yeah, we're just entering the quadrangle of Windsor Castle. Actually, just looking at the timings, the revised timings that I've been sent by Buckingham Palace, we're only a few minutes behind schedule now. They've made up some time. I don't know whether they got the horses not to hold back on that carriage procession, but they were expected to arrive at 12:20. So we're 14 minutes behind schedule. And they are being greeted by a guard of honour with the state colours of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards, the mass bands of the Foot Guards and the pipes and drums. And they are going to be performing a royal salute, and the band will play the US and the British national anthems as the President and the First Lady and the King and Queen take their positions on the dais. They'll have a royal salute, as I said, the national anthems will be played, and the Guard Commander will present the Guard for inspection by the President, accompanied by the King.
Well, as that, yeah, forgive me, Sarah, but as that ending of the American national anthem, we'll let everyone hear in full here, God Save the King.
President, the Guard of Honour of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards are present and awaiting your entry.
So the President and the King are about to spend that as we speak. The joys of modern technology means that the microphone's got us a little closer than at previous events. And of course, as we sit here now watching what is starting to play out, just the incredible, I mean, it is incredible to sit back and watch this pageantry live. Sarah Hewson, of course, a broadcaster, a journalist and a royal editor, somebody who is across all of the detail of what is taking place here. This will now take a couple of moments, but again, Sarah, what we are seeing now, and again, the idea that you can see that the President, of course, when he's dealing with his own military in the United States, he'll often stop, regardless of rank, and have a chat to some of the people involved. These are events where everyone can be stony silent or have a conversation as they go, but help explain what people are seeing on TV now.
Yeah, this is the Guard of Honour being inspected, and we saw the Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green, who's a South African officer of the Coldstream Guards, leading the President and explaining exactly what he was about to see before him. 3 regiments taking part in this Guard of Honour. The Grenadier Guards, and you can tell who they are because they have a white plume in their bearskin caps and singular buttons on their scarlet tunics. You've got the Coldstream Guards, which you can just about make out have a red plume in their bearskin caps, and the Scots Guards' bearskins don't have any plumes. They've got a thistle embroidered onto their tunics. And so the President will be given all of the details of these. He may be introduced to some of the members of these regiments. He'll stop, but their job is to stand absolutely rigidly still. And as they are inspected by the President, we saw the state colours of the regiments being raised. They will be held aloft, and they weigh 10 kilograms each, Paul. It is seen as the biggest honour to be the one chosen to raise the state colour. It is the most impressive in the regiment who gets that honour. Young officer, a career highlight for them, it's described. And interesting here that the way in which they are walking, the President is walking ahead of King Charles. This is very much the President's moment, and he is being guided through this Guard of Honour by Lieutenant Colonel Storm Green, with the King following on behind. It's not often that the King walks behind, is it?
I was going to say, yeah, this is quite a significant reorganising in front of our eyes, but again, whether that was spatial or a break with tradition, but you can see these little hand gestures, the little smiles that are happening between them as well, Sarah.
Yes, yeah, you can see the affection between them. They are very familiar with each other. The King wanting to make sure that the President is very welcome. The President describing this as a friendship that goes back way before Charles became king, and a friendship with Charles and Camilla on first name terms, on letter writing terms. There is a huge amount of respect. After the assassination attempt on President Trump, the King was very quick to write to him to express his shock at that and his wishes for the President's swift recovery. So the King has now escorted the President back onto the dais there, the platform covered to shelter them from the elements at the end of this Guard of Honour. And we've had the mass bands of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards and the Scots Guards performing during that Guard of Honour inspection. And we always get a few details about the individuals involved and why they are significant, including there's one of the musicians, a tuba player who was born and grew up in Virginia, in the United States before he moved to the UK and joined the British Army. He's very likely to have been pointed out to the president, cementing those ties between the British and the US military as well. And we've now got the mounted troops of the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery riding into the quadrangle with their guns. These are field guns, all dating from the First World War, each drawn by 6 colour-matched horses. And these are the guns that the president heard as he arrived in Windsor, that fired that gun salute to mark his arrival.
Again, this is the last formal part of the greeting of the President of the United States by the King and Queen of the United Kingdom and its realms, including Australia. Important to always mention on this side of the world. Here with Sarah Houston, who's providing such phenomenal detail here as, again, this final part. And then we're off to, as you said, before a banquet. But the program is essentially one where they will be in the company of many at the castle for what, the best part of 4 hours I'm just looking at here. Do we know much about what happens next or what the assumption is behind closed doors? It's not all fully televised, of course. This is all in and of itself the opening. There won't be cameras in all parts of what we see in the next few hours, Sarah?
No, but it is a private lunch that takes place inside the State Dining Hall in Windsor Castle for members of the royal family, the Trump entourage, Trump family members who've travelled with them as well. Then there'll be an exchange of gifts. They will look at an exhibition of artefacts relating to UK-US ties as well. This afternoon, there is time that has been made in the schedule for that private visit to the burial place of Queen Elizabeth II. As I mentioned to you, Paul, we know that the President and the First Lady were very, very keen to pay their respects to her while they are in Windsor. And then they will return to the castle for tea with the King and Queen before they get their glad rags on and get ready for the state banquet, the climax of today's festivities that will be taking place. We will have all the bling on display later on this evening, Paul. And they're staying the night at Windsor Castle as well. So it's a royal sleepover for the President and the First Lady.
Good of them not to bring the drag bags with them. They've got the staff to do that. We didn't see the overhead or the overnight luggage. But again, all of those times, and this is what is so wonderful about what we're seeing here, is there are very few things that would leave a US president in awe. Obviously, they know the importance and the projection of power that comes from everything from the Oval Office to the White House. But being able to spend a night with royalty and to spend a night in this building with its history, that is obviously going to impress the president. We'll just again take some live audio here because I know people enjoy all of this stuff without us talking over it.
Close order! March! Your will move to the left in 3. 4 3s! Left!
As Sarah was mentioning about the private lunch and the great banquet that will be taking place a bit later, we are going to see in about 4 hours from now, so do your sums about where you are in Australia, a fly past, but it is going to be one of the first times that there has been effectively a joint fly past of both American and United Kingdom Air Forces. The F-35s will be up front, the Red Arrows, all 9 of them will be in following. And again, this is the start of a multi-day occasion, that being the state visit, the focus again in and around Windsor Castle today, and a little more focus with the Prime Minister. Is it not tomorrow, Sarah?
Tomorrow is all about the politics. The President is going to head to Chequers, that's the country residence of the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, for meetings there, and when they will be signing a trade deal, £30 billion deal that is at stake here. And the First Lady will be hosted by Queen Camilla. They will be visiting Queen Mary's Doll's House, which is a fascinating miniature doll's house in the grounds of Windsor. And then she'll join the Princess of Wales for an engagement celebrating nature with the Chief Scout as well in Windsor. And that relationship with the Princess of Wales, the future King and Queen, very core and key to this as well. Just watching the march past of the Guard of Honour, they are heading out of Windsor Castle through the George IV gate towards the Long Walk. And that then, the culmination of this will be time for the members of the Presidential and Royal Party to head inside to the state dining room in Windsor Castle for their lunch. And then, as you said, about 4 hours' time, they'll be coming back out onto the east lawn of Windsor Castle for beating retreat. Now, that is a military spectacle, a ceremony involving musicians from the various different armed forces, and it originated in the early years of organised warfare. It symbolises the end of the day when camp gates were closed and ceremonial flags were lowered. It's definitely not going to be the end of the day for this visit. There's an awful lot more to come after that, but we will see the mass bands there on the east lawn of Windsor Castle, and another real spectacle there as the afternoon comes to a close, at least. And then, weather permitting, the fly past, as you were there describing there, Paul, the F-35s, the fast jets from the Royal Air Force and the US Air Force, due to take place at 4:45 UK time, followed by the Red Arrows. And there is no big state occasion that really without the involvement of the Red Arrows flying overhead. It does look to me like it's brightening up slightly, and let's hope so, because they will certainly want that to be able to go ahead for the President before this evening's festivities inside St George's Hall for the big state banquet.
Now, Sophie, I'm going to get a note from my... Sarah, I'm going to get a note from my mum, firstly, if we don't talk to Sophie Ellsworth in a moment, but also if I don't let some bagpipes play live on the air. So, as the President and the King make their way off to this private lunch, have a little listen. All right, Sarah, you'll have the final word on what we've been watching for the past hour, but our colleague Sophie Ellsworth, who is the European correspondent for News Corp, she joins us now from outside of the castle. Give me an idea of what has been happening away from the TV screens, but in exactly the same place.
Well, great to be with you, Paul. Where else would you rather be than outside Windsor Castle on this momentous day? We were waiting through the hours of this morning for the arrival of the US President Donald Trump and his wife, First Lady Melania Trump, look, Paul, there's a lot of onlookers here who have been out here for hours waiting for his arrival, despite the fact that they won't get anywhere close near to the US president or his wife. There's an awful lot of security here, Paul. There's police everywhere. There's Secret Service. They're dotted all around Windsor. And there's also that massive fence around Windsor Estate, which stops people from getting anywhere near close to the US president, as this is an extremely tightly held visit and he won't have any public engagement during his 2-day trip here to the UK, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, Sophie, obviously we had seen some people trying to make it about other issues, and police will be involved as a result of somebody trying to put a giant projection, successfully able to do so, up onto Windsor Castle of the President and, of course, Jeffrey Epstein. But in terms of the security, again, as tough and tight as it all is, it, again, has been a flawless sign of things being done, and the scale of the occasion, of course. None of that poise changes for the next couple of days as nervousness moves to the next stage and the next stage of the program. Just briefly, Sophie, again, was there big screens? Was there an ability for the public to see any of it? Or essentially you could hear some beautiful music, even if at times a little faint?
Not really, Paul. You can't see anything from where I am. Out here with the public, unless you're in the very tightly held media contingency. There's only a handful of media that were accredited to go in for this trip today, which is often the occasion with these sort of events. So really people are just here to soak up the atmosphere. It's a bit of a drizzly day here. It's very overcast, typical British fashion here that we're have here. But look, it is great to be here. There is a real buzz in the air, Paul. And look, we know the US president, he loves Britain. He loves the UK. His mother was Scottish. He was only in Scotland a few months ago. He really wanted this second state visit. It's an unprecedented state visit, and there'll be a lot to see that unfolds in the next couple of days, particularly when he meets with Sir Keir Starmer, because we know he's in a lot of strife with various political issues the Labor government here has been facing in the UK, Paul.
But this, as I understand, still an active conversation about whether there would be a joint press conference because of the issues that are being dealt with. And, of course, part of that trouble at the moment is in and around the UK ambassador to the United States, who has just in the past couple of days been sacked. Why? Because of the connections to Epstein. I wouldn't imagine there's going to be any opening up towards questions, whether there's statements and people are trying to get their questions in. We'll all find out together. Sophie, thank you. We can, of course, read you. We'll see you a little later into the night. Sarah Hewson, though, I just want to say thank you so much to you for your assistance in the past hour. Again, yet another occasion, done flawlessly and done to impress the world. I think a president will be very impressed, and those of us on the other side of the world equally impressed. Well done as always. Thank you for all of your help, mate.
Thanks very much indeed for having me, Paul.
You're the best. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah Hewson there, joining us from the United Kingdom. Sophie Ellsworth as well.